right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Just seeing a bit of replay of the end of the race there about what was happening. I knew I saw smoke on the entrance to pit road, but it seems that Larson had spun it down pit road. And then a big last lap pileup. We'll get that, the replay of that when we get to it in the race recap as soon as we can. Let's go to our bookmarks. All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. As you guys can see, the bottom of the screen, Denny Hamlin wins the Cracker Barrel 400. Good to have you here, Christian and G Danger. Good race, bad winner. My boy almost died. LOL. Is your guy Reddick? That was a hard hit for Reddick. But I agree. It was a really fun race. I mean, I picked Hamlin to win, but I'm not happy. Not happy about it. But I don't know if you guys noticed, but Hamlin was acting very different getting out of the car. And I'm wondering how much it had to do with, you know, what's been going on, you know, the reaction to, you know, Kyle Busch's passing. Denny was a lot softer there, getting out of the car. Gives a little bow and just, you know, happy, not really antagonizing the crowd. That was a different attitude for Denny. I don't know if anybody else picked up on that, but I felt that was pretty different. Let me mute the post-race of Prime. So, yeah, this is our Cracker Barrel 400 post-race show. The race at Nashville just wrapped up. The first thing, you know, we've talked about it a little last week, but also, again, this week, the Prime coverage. I continue to enjoy the Prime coverage. The only downside about Prime is not everyone has access to Amazon Prime. So I hate it for those people. I wish there was still a broadcast option, but I would be completely fine if Prime and their team just took over the whole season because they do such a great job. You get a full hour of pre-race. Last week, I don't know if they're going to do this week, but last week we got an hour and a half of post-race coverage. This race started late. It's already late in the night, so I'm not sure, you know, how much post-race we're going to get. But they always do a great job over there. And Mark Martin was there for the pre-race. Carl Edwards, he's on the Prime team, but he took off. He only did one race this year. He's gone in Alaska. So Mark Martin stepped in for him. Did a great job. They talked a bit about their effort between Dale Jr. and Mark Martin bringing back the chase system, getting a more traditional points format. So that was fun to see Mark. Qualifying was canceled. It was rained out. We dealt with rain again all weekend like we did last weekend. So more watching the radar all throughout this weekend's coverage. The field was set by metric. And so Denny led them off from the pole. He jumps the start by a mile, gets a penalty sent to the back, and Reddick assumed the lead. Then we had a caution on lap 35. It was a competition caution because we didn't qualify, and we only had 45 minutes of practice, which was decent. But, you know, just kind of standard procedure for NASCAR. So competition caution lap 35. That kind of saved Hamlin from going down a lap. Because at the end, of stage one, Denny was, or not at the end of stage one, towards the end of the caution for lap 35, whoever was leading at that point, it may have still been Reddick, was actually running down Denny. I don't think he would have forced the issue if he had gotten there, but he was actually making a little ground up. So if Denny had gone down a lap early there, that would have put him in a really bad place, but that competition caution kind of saved him. There was a lot of weird strategy throughout this whole race. You saw it on this first on this lap 35 caution. A lot of guys taking 2 tires, and then the rest of the field taking 4. So that really shuffled things up. On the restart, SVG went to the lead. SVG was actually running well, started the race inside the top 10, and continued to run well for much of the race. And, you know, I was just wondering, like, how much of it is him running actually competitive, and he was running decent lap times, or how much of it was track position? Because today was a really track position heavy kind of race. even when the track would widen out to 2, sometimes 3 lanes, 3 would get sketchy. The inside line always had the preferred, that was the preferred groove, and we saw that at the end of the race. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then on lap 73, Zilich pancakes the outside wall. Let's bring that up for you guys. That up and over. There you go. So this is a look at the onboard. Zilich loses that right front rotor, pancakes the outside wall. Thankfully, it blew when it did. So you'll see the right side jump up when it blows, and he gets into the outside wall. If it had blown 1 second later, 2 seconds later, Zilich would have already arced it down the track, potentially behind this car in front of him, and would have had a lot further to travel, would have hit the wall a lot harder. But thankfully, he didn't have too far to go, but it was still a hard hit for Connor Zilich. And then Allmendinger ends up winning stage 1. I skipped over one thing. Chastain also lost a rotor. This was like 10 laps later. You know, so it was weird. Teammates, Zilich and Chastain, both losing a rotor right in almost the same part of the track. And a little bit less of a hit for Chastain, but still, you know, riding that wall with a ton of speed. Throwback to Martinsville here when he wall rode over there. But this was not for the race win. This actually ended his day. So Zilich and Chastain both finishing in the final 2 positions, DNFing today. So let's look at our stage 1 results. Allmendinger took stage 1, like we just said. Allmendinger getting 10 points. He needs that. Good for him. Kyle Larson coming up just a bit short, 9 points. Ryan Blaney 3rd. 4th, Chase Elliott. Tyler Reddick 5th. 6th, Bubba Wallace. 7th, William Byron. 8th, Chase Briscoe. 9th, Riley Herbst. And 10th, Corey Heim. Corey Heim was actually running top 5 on pace at certain points in this race. At least early in this race he was. So it was a really good start to the race for Corey Heim. Daniel Suarez started in the top 10, fell back, but going to finish the stage in 11th. Decent enough for him. Decent finish to the stage for Eric Jones. Joey started way back in the field. Going to finish stage 1 in 13th, so that was a good finish for him. SVG got the short end of the stick here. He ran way better than where he placed in the stage, and Alex Bowman had to work his way up through the field a bit. So going to finish the stage 17th. Looking further back through the field, anything notable? Austin Hill in the 33, back there in 34th. And then our 2 Trackhouse guys out of the race already. And this immediately put the conversation, the speculation around, would we see the same thing with SVG? But they said something interesting over SVG's radio. They said, you don't have to worry. What we have is a lot different. Meaning their setup was a lot different than their teammates. So what was the difference? And why is Chastain and Zilich, or why are Chastain and Zilich not running that same setup or a similar setup? Because they were both struggling throughout the race. Zilich was struggling just to stay in the top 30, and Chastain was running around 20th. And yet SVG on pace, running top 10. So it's like, you know, what's the difference here? And will the other 2 guys get on board finally? Because SVG, he's definitely come a long way, but that team definitely has an edge over their 2 teammates. So I don't think SVG suddenly gotten better at ovals than Zilich and Chastain, but here we are. So, you know, respect to Chastain for handling, you know, today's race as well as he did. On lap 146, there was a caution for Austin Dillon getting turned. Let's see if we have a replay of this. Look at the 2 Trackhouse cars in the garage. Oh, this was the run to end stage 1. Let's go ahead and take a look at this before we move on. So Larson looked like he was going to take it, but Allmendinger got a great run out of 4, and that carried him across the line first. Really impressive. All right, so here it was, the RFK conspiracy to take out Austin Dillon. I mean, a near miss there. Stenhouse coming to pit road, Brad Keselowski almost clearing him out, but swerving at the last second, going to lose a ton of pace here. So he's off the pace. He comes down the track, maybe to block. I'm not sure what his goal here was. And this is when Buescher was catching Austin Dillon. So Austin Dillon ends up getting the raw end of the deal there. I think, Keselowski was backing out of the gas. Austin Dillon probably backed out of it here. And Buescher was just still closing in, and they caught their bumpers, off center and with a little lateral motion, and that ended up sending Austin through the infield. But really no harm, no foul. They all continue. Good job there by Dillon for keeping it out of the outside wall, and good job on the rest of the field for keeping it clean. Not bad, not bad. And then on lap 173, AJ Allmendinger hit the outside wall. And it was also a rotor failure. So just like the other two Trackhouse guys. So now it's 3 Chevys out of the race for rotor failures. On lap 183, Todd Gilliland, Corey Heim, and Cole Custer get together to bring out the caution. And this was a big chain of events. What's really ended up setting this off in the first place, you're not going to see it here because it happened, I believe, the lap before, is SVG drove it in deep. He dive bombed Gilliland and ended up really taking off the lettering and potentially cutting down a tire for Gilliland, causing him to back out of it this much. But there was some speculation there, but it sent Gilliland up the track and put him in position to make this happen. So this is the next lap after the contact between SVG and Gilliland. So Gilliland up the track there. And they said Corey Heim may have gotten into the back of him. This isn't a great replay to see that, but Corey Heim gets collected. Poor Custer. I mean, nothing he could really do. He ends up spinning it and backing into Gilliland, but not really damage there. Custer just didn't really run well today outside of track position when he would take 2 and other people wouldn't. But yeah, unfortunate for those 3 guys. They all continue, albeit with a little damage. And on lap 193, the field stacks up. Keselowski gets turned by Austin Dillon. So, I mean, this was another whole chain of events. What we were talking about before this is Herbst and Zane Smith were all over each other. And so I was trying to talk about that when this happened live. And then Stenhouse gets into Gragson. Stenhouse goes up the track to catch it. Stacks up these guys further back. And then we see almost the exact same thing we saw with the last Austin Dillon incident, but this time with Austin in the giving position instead of the receiving position. And so I think that's Ty Dillon. He's down the track pretty far, but he's slowing down potentially for what's going on ahead of him. The field's stacking up. I believe Keselowski thought he had a line here to take, and I honestly believe Dillon was going to follow him through. It looks like Dillon was going to line up and push. And but Dillon comes down the track there. I don't really like that decision to come down the track. I mean, you were just... I mean, maybe he's going down the block, so I'm not really going to judge Ty Dillon on that. But it looked to me like Austin was coming down to help push and maybe make up some ground there, have the inside line going into 1. But what ended up happening here is he gets hooked, and immediately Brad Keselowski's spotter starts saying that was on purpose, that was intentional, Dillon needs a week off. It didn't look intentional to me. Dale Jr. agreed. He didn't think it was intentional. And that also ends up taking out Cindric. So 3 Fords all collected in a short amount of time. Gilliland on the incident before, and this time Cindric and Brad Keselowski. So both those guys to the garage. And then, let's see. Let's look at our Stage 2 results. Daniel Suarez taking Stage 2. Alex Bowman second. I can hardly believe it looking at it. Third place, Ricky Stenhouse. Austin Cindric 4th. Denny Hamlin 5th. 6th, Michael McDowell. 7th, William Byron. 8th, Christopher Bell, 9th, Chase Briscoe, and 10th, Brad Keselowski. So what happened here, I guess, I wasn't really paying too much attention at this point. I was looking at the radar and talking to chat and all this different stuff, looking at highlights. But these guys stayed out on that, probably the lap 193 caution, while a lot of these other guys ended up coming into pit. So that really, shuffled up the field. But that was a great call for Bowman Suarez to get some stage points here. But they ended up having to, pay the tire tax, as the prime guys call it. But they ended up having to come down and pit during the stage break while the leaders didn't. So they got shuffled to the tail end, very tail end. Lap 204, right after the stage restart. Huge stack up here. So Hocevar, I don't think he did anything wrong here. Buescher says this was a dive bomb, but that's the normal line to run. Zane Smith right behind him was running a similar line, so it's not like he dove it on the apron. But he gets it in there a little too hot and washes up the track. Buescher was running him really close. No room to the side. And even Eric Jones was not Eric Jones. This is John Hunter. Yeah, John Hunter. Hard to tell them apart some weeks. But that sends Buescher up the track. And Bubba was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Gets that side contact from Buescher. Byron gets in the back of Bowman. And that sends him also into the outside wall and breaks his right rear toe link. Also, I believe, broke a toe link for Bubba Wallace. So that ruined these guys' days. And then at the tail end of this ticked me off. There's nothing Bubba could really do here. He wasn't really steering that car at this point. The steering was damaged. So he's coming back down the track. Bowman thinks he's clear and gets taken out. That contact breaks the right rear toe link and sends Bowman back up the track. That ends Bowman's day. I hate these papier-mâché Gen 7 cars. The cars themselves might be really tough and sometimes too tough, but the toe links are just made out of paper, or as someone in our chat earlier said, chocolate. So, yeah, they're just so weak. And a broken toe link, that just ruins your day immediately. I would rather cut down a tire than break a toe link. At least with a cut down tire, occasionally you can make it back down pit road. That's the price we pay, though, for going to this Gen 7 design. Broken toe links every week, and sometimes from the slightest contact. That didn't look like a super hard hit for Byron. He'd already started to slow the car down, but still, even that broke the right rear toe link. So that's 2 Hendrick cars taken out in one go. That was race ending for Bowman. Super disappointing there. On lap 214, Gilliland and John Hunter Nemechek go around. So this was not Hocevar's fault, but Hocevar was involved. So John Hunter Nemechek just backs out of the gas. It happens to be Hocevar that's there to run him over. And actually really good driving there from Hocevar not to get collected. And also to stay off of Stenhouse, because he could have immediately right-hooked Stenhouse. And then Herbst narrowly avoiding getting right-hooked. Josh Berry into the back of him. So multi-car incident there. Further back, Todd Gilliland went around. I never saw really what happened there. It could have been Cody Ware that ran him over. Maybe he lost it on his own. Not quite sure. Never really got a great replay of that. And then on lap 287, it looked like Bell was going to run away with this thing. He had the lead. Really, the only thing that could stop Bell from winning was a caution. So here we go. Bell lining them up. That Joey Logano's a lap car at this point, and Zane Smith was out on old tires. So Bell just runs by him, gets the lead, and he's going to run away with this thing, right? And immediately after, Buescher into the outside wall. Another rotor down. And that's going to bring out the late caution. This changed strategy. A lot of guys came down and took 4. Some guys came down and took 2. And then we had, our normal leaders that were still up front. This set up Bell, Briscoe, and Hamlin, the 3 Toyotas that were, really dominant for a lot of the race, to decide this between themselves. Here we'll have a look at the restart here. So Hamlin delivers a really solid push to Bell here. Bell not able to hold it down low. That's where he messed up. And maybe it was from the push that Hamlin gave him. He just entered at the wrong speed. This gave Hamlin the inside. So even though I strongly believe Bell had the strongest car at this point in the race, Hamlin had the preferred groove. And you'll see multiple times during this run right here, Hamlin uses him up, drives him up the track. And whether or not he was intentionally driving Bell up the track, that didn't work in Bell's favor. To run that outside line and to run it quickly, you have to run right on the door of the guy to your inside. You have to really pinch them off. But on corner entry through the middle of the corner, Denny kept running him wide. And I believe they made contact multiple times. If I'm Bell, I'm sitting there thinking, I have the faster car. I know you're going for it, but you have a win. I'm not. I'm hungry. At what point does that right rear of Denny Hamlin start looking, appetizing? And up the track again. The guy that runs the inside line, he just runs right along the painted line. But Denny, again, up the track here. Up the track. That's forcing Bell to adjust. And this also opened the door for Briscoe. Briscoe not able to take advantage of it. He could have chosen one of his teammates to help. But Briscoe, I guess, does the smart thing, goes into business for himself. But this ends up impacting Bell. Bell was really the fastest car here. Tries to, gas it up on the entry to the corner, drive it in deep to hold the lead. But because he drove it in deep, washes up the track in front of Briscoe, ruins his run, and that opens the door for Hamlin. Hamlin now has the most momentum coming to this final set of corners. Bell had one choice here, and it was to drive it in deep and get under Hamlin. But Hamlin knows that, and you can't drive in behind another car with this Gen 7 package. So Bell goes up the track, not able to make up the distance, and Denny Hamlin, after the lap 1, not even restart violation, just the start violation, jumped the start of the race, comes back and wins it. Incredible. Incredible. Great performance for him. He didn't have a race-winning car. He didn't have a race-winning car there at the end. Bell was the class of the field at the end of the race. Briscoe might have even had a better car than Hamlin. But Hamlin executed when it mattered. And Hamlin was my pick to win, so I'm kind of happy about that. But another Hamlin win. We sat through a rain delay, sat through 20 cautions, and there was also a big wreck behind this. You actually see it kicking off here. Looks like Elliott maybe gets turned by whoever's behind him. And that sends him down the track into Reddick. Reddick gets right hooked, I'm guessing, and hard into the outside wall. So let's see if we have a replay of that. Oh, here it is. So it's a push by Blaney that upsets him. That's not even a bad push. But that's going to send Reddick up the track, and he gets demolished. That's after they cross the start-finish line. Their clear race is over. So maybe that's why Chase was backing out of it, but... Oh, no, that's as they took the line. So, yeah. Just a bad push coming to the line. Blaney was trying to help his teammate. But Reddick ends up paying the price here, gets obliterated. Blaney just squeaking through there. Chase Elliott, not really much damage there, aside from getting into Reddick. So, and he continues. But yeah, a very big wreck after the race. And then one thing I like to point out is when Denny got out of the car to give an interview, he gave a Kyle Busch bow, kind of pay respects to Kyle. But it was a different tone Denny had. It was a much softer interview, a much more grateful interview, like a lot of gratitude. And he wasn't antagonizing the fans, really. So I'm wondering how much that had to do with just wanting to focus on Kyle in that moment, or maybe the events of the last week really changed his mindset about this. I don't know. But it definitely felt like a unique moment for Denny. Sometimes drivers, lose that fire late in their career, and Denny obviously has it on track, but in terms of the aggressiveness and wanting to be the heel, they just kind of want to do their own thing, and maybe that's what Denny's focusing on now. I'm just going to go out there and win, and, who cares what people think? But previously, Denny was, who cares what you think, and he would say it to your face. Who cares what you think? Instead of who cares what they think. There's a difference there. And maybe that doesn't continue. Maybe we don't see that Denny again, but the post-race interview felt different to me. And speaking of post-race, Prime is still covering the race. They do a great job. They're still covering the post-race, and probably will be for the next hour. They gave an hour and a half of post-race last week. That's a little race recap. Let me see what you guys have said. And we'll try to look at points and wrap things up here. Christian said NASCAR knew Larson spun on purpose, so they kept it green and didn't let Larson pull a Cody Ware. I don't know if he spun on purpose. I don't know if we're going conspiracy theory again. I'm not sure why he spun, but the leaders were coming to the checkered flag, so they could have thrown it early. But they also could have thrown it after they took the white flag. So they could have ended the race early. Who would have won the race if they had thrown the caution? So this is coming to the stripe. Then he has the advantage. Uses him up here. That's the spin. Tons of smoke. But he's down pit road. So, that's almost enough reason to keep it green by itself. They could have thrown it here. Bell gets the win, but yeah, even so, like, Denny still pretty clearly out front for most of this lap. So they didn't really change the outcome of the race, whether or not they threw the flag or not. Chad Fincham finished 28th and almost outran Austin Hill, who finished 27th. That is wild. JGR 1-2-3 with the Kyle Busch Nos throwback, finishing 4th. Not bad, Dark Side. That's interesting. Christian said, rumor is, according to NASCAR reporter Joseph Striegli, Nick Sanchez is expected to join Peterson Racing for select races to end this season, so possibly maybe a 2-car plan for Peterson in 27. Interesting. What about Shane Van Cheeseburger getting in top 5? Interesting. Are we allowed to call? Yeah, you can call out. I'll open it up just for you. Just give me a moment. If you're still here. Yeah, we have the number up there for a reason, and anyone's allowed to call. See, we actually just missed a call. That was probably you, Dark Side. Let me remove this from there. Okay, so I think we have it set up and ready to go. If you would like to call in, and I'm not going to, dox you. We've done that in the past accidentally to some people. I immediately take the stream down if I ever actually show someone's number. And I edit that part out. Yeah. I'm not about to dox somebody. There we go. Dark Side's calling in.
Call from.
Hello?
To accept, press 1. To send a...
Welcome, Dark Side. Welcome to the post-race show. And feel free to share whatever thoughts you have on today's race.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
For sure.
A second here to connect my headset.
All right. I understand with the headset.
There we go.
All right. So what are your thoughts on today's events?
Well, I did feel like the racing was incredibly good. It felt like Goodyear brought a good tire. Like it didn't really wear as much as I think the drivers would have liked, but that could have been because of the fact that the track was obviously all washed away from the rubber from the shower, the rain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I was thinking about that at different points in the race. That we didn't have tire failures, but I mean, there wasn't a massive amount of fall off. Again, like you said, like maybe not as much as they would have wanted, but I was honestly, with all the rotor failures, I was expecting somebody to cut a tire down on the debris. So, that didn't happen. That's a good thing, but yeah, I mean, maybe not the best tire that Goodyear's ever brought, but it's not the worst tire that Goodyear's ever brought.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I felt like maybe for the concrete, they were expecting maybe more heat on the track for this time of the year, so they brought a little bit of a more rigid tire to try and combat the temperatures. But obviously, with the rain, it was kind of cooler in Tennessee than what it was last year. But I was very shocked as well by the amount of brake failures that they had, especially for Trackhouse having, what was it, 2 in like 25 or 30 laps of each other?
2 maybe within 10 laps of each other. Let me look at my notes. It was really close. Lap 73 for Zilich and lap 82 for Chastain.
That's insane.
I was shocked by the Chastain one because of...
I was too.
They had just come out from under caution, so you wouldn't think the brakes would be too hot. But, one of the theories was maybe it was the heat cycles that did it. But still, that was wild. Back to back.
Exactly. Yeah, and then I'm sure SVG got the info on that, and I'm sure maybe he was just letting it roll more in the corner to try and lay off the brakes, because obviously if 2 of his own teammates had the issue of their brakes failing, he was probably worried about his own equipment as well. But I felt like SVG drove a very good race tonight.
He did. I was somewhat still doubting, even when he was running in first. I was like, how much of this is track position? Because Nashville is a really track position heavy track. Even when it widens out, the inside is still the preferred groove. And so I was like, just kind of wondering. And then even when he would get shuffled back through strategy or whatnot, he still kept finding his way back to the top 10. It's like, he's actually fast. He doesn't have race winning pace, but that's definitely top 10 pace most of the day.
I had been saying that once he figures out how to drive on the ovals, and with his already unbeatable abilities on road courses, once he gets a few oval wins under his belt, he figures out how to put his car in the best positions late in those runnings. He's going to be a very big problem for the rest of the field.
I mean, he doesn't even have to really go out and win much at all on the ovals. As long as he comes halfway and can finish top 15 each week, it's an automatic chase berth for SVG, because he's going to get the points in the road courses. And if he can stop running 30th occasionally on the ovals, then, I mean, he's set. Before the race, we looked at the points, and I was thinking, if SVG runs 30th this race and doesn't get any stage points, I could see him being 16th or 17th by the end of the day. And maybe he heard that. He turned it up and actually had a really good race. I was definitely shocked about that.
Yeah, me too, especially because he ran really, really well at the 600, which is obviously one of, if not the hardest race of the year for someone who has very little experience at driving 500-600 miles, in a single day, on the track. With him running up front, leading laps, and now with him running good here at Nashville, it would not surprise me if by the end of this season he does get his first oval win. I don't foresee a track, maybe somewhere like Atlanta, where he can kind of rely on the draft, or like a Daytona or Talladega, to get his first win. But it would not surprise me if he gets his first oval win in 2026.
That's a pretty bold prediction. I mean, maybe like kind of like with Zane Smith. I don't really see Zane Smith having like race dominating pace, but given the right set of circumstances, I could see Zane Smith winning. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Like, I don't see Ty Dillon winning one. And, it would have to be a freak set of circumstances where the race gets rained out and he's the only guy that stayed out. But, like, a Zane Smith, I could see doing that. SVG's in that same tier right now where it's like, oh, yeah, like, given the right set of circumstances, maybe he takes 2, other people take 4, and he gets it done. Or, like, you set a drafting track, he could potentially do it because he had a couple good finishes early in the season on the ovals, and I was thinking, well, maybe he's kind of got it figured out. And then like Phoenix happened, and the following weeks happened, and it's like, oh, he doesn't have it figured out, but maybe he's coming back around 2 good weeks in a row.
Maybe, yeah, you're right. I did see in your chat here with Christian Riley saying that Bubba choking of a chase spot has officially started. Bubba's downfall over the last couple of months since, I want to say, April-ish, really has to be studied because I think it was Darlington where he was, second in the points? And now here he is, 15th in the standings? Or 13th in the standings, excuse me. So to go from 2nd to 13th in the standings over the last, let's say, 10 races is pretty substantial. But the one thing I do like about Wallace and what he's been saying lately is I heard his interview earlier today before the race when somebody asked him about his downfall as of late. He takes full blame. He does not blame his crew chief. He does not blame his car, and you really can't blame the equipment when your teammate has 5 wins in a year already.
Yeah, I like that
shows how much of. Go ahead.
I like that he takes the fault for it, and like I hate that he takes it as rough as he does. Instead of like other drivers I mentioned during the stream, Kyle Busch would just, even during his RCR days when he would wreck out or have a mechanical issue, he'd be like, yeah, the day's great, or sarcastically, just kind of take it on the chin, even though you can tell he's disappointed. With Bubba, it's like, man, I feel like he watched his dog die. Like,
I was just about to say, it's almost like when Bubba wrecks out, where it's almost like someone like shoots his dog or something.
Yeah, I feel bad for him though, because earlier in the season, even when he was still second in the points, I was bringing up the fact that like Reddick already has 3 wins, already has 4 wins, already has 5 wins. Like, it has to be on his mind because Bubba's supposed to be at least winning 1 or 2 a year in that equipment. And this is a special year where Toyota definitely has an advantage. 1, 2, 3 today.
Yeah.
And, Riley Herbst has been able to finish top 15 sometimes. For that to happen, Toyota has to have a big advantage. And so to not win in the year that you have your best shot to win, yeah, it's been a rough time. And to see Bubba go from second in points down to near the cut line. I actually need to check the standings, but yeah, it's been difficult to watch.
Yeah, definitely. I believe he's like 13th in the standings right now. I don't know if they've been updated with the conclusion of Nashville. The one thing that I've been saying, I said to my mom earlier today, she was asking me about the race. Where is Kyle Larson going to show up sometime this season?
It's so Kyle, I don't know what happened. Maybe they cut down a tire. I'm not sure what it was, but I saw it might have been the last restart where he lost like 10 positions and then eventually spun. Before that, he was still having like a top 10-ish day and running around the top 5. Best Chevy for most of the day. Kyle's like still consistent, kind of like Chase Elliott, outside of Chase actually winning twice this year. Chase is just kind of around usually. If occasionally have a day where he runs 20th, but he usually is somewhere around the top 10. And
yeah,
that's why Kyle won the championship last year. It wasn't that he won a lot towards the end of the year. It was actually the opposite. He won his races at the start of the year. It's just the rest of the year he ran consistently. So I mean, he's still running well, but they need to get over that hump. And aside from Chase Elliott getting a couple wins, I mean, Hendrick as a whole is down. William Byron looked like the next, best thing. Looked like last year he finally had broken through and found his rhythm. And this year, with that new Camaro body, 24 crew is struggling. Bowman can't catch a break, even after he's come back from his injury. And Blake Harris just keeps bringing tractors. So I'm not sure what Hendrick as a whole is doing. But yeah, I mean, I keep waiting for Larson to break back through to return to his form before last year's double. It's like something changed after last May, and that Larson hasn't shown back up to the track in a long time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was just about to say, I feel like ever since he wrecked out of the Indy 500 and wrecked out of the Coke 600 last year, he has not. It's almost like he got a major hit to his confidence, and he just has not been able to find that driver yet. Because before that, we had him. People were touting him as, oh, he can hold a candle to Max Verstappen in Formula One, and now here he is, running top 10, upper half of top 10, lower half of the top 5 every single week. But then like tonight, he has a tire blowout, and he finishes, I think, like 21st. It's just he's not the Kyle Larson that we have grown accustomed to, that would go out at like a track like Nashville or Charlotte and would lead 225 laps and win the race by 10 seconds.
Definitely. It's definitely a different look for Kyle Larson. Some of that I think you can explain away with, like, definitely Chevy's down from where they were last year, but even last year wasn't doing great. But also, like, Larson and Elliott and a lot of the guys that were winning race after race, they're in contention every week, haven't really adapted to this Gen 7 car very well. I think that's especially the case with Elliott and Larson, where before, I mean, they were a danger. They were a threat every time we went to a road course, and now Chase has a hard time running in the top 5 at a road course. I don't think Chase got worse at them. Maybe there's a better driver now, and that's, SVG, but he should still be at least second, third, based off of how he used to light the field up. It's just a lot of drivers, they're really good in the old stuff. That's why I think you see a big disconnect now with guys moving up from the O'Reilly series, like Connor Zilic. Great in the old stuff, new car drives completely differently. And so the edge is so hard to find now in this Gen 7 car. If Kyle, we said it during the stream, but if Kyle has a 5th place car, he's going to try to make up those additional 4 spots just in the car. But the Gen 7 car is not about that. You might be able to make up 1 or 2 spots in the Gen 7 car. And so Kyle's used to being able to push and make up the difference. And now when he does it, I think a lot of the times, even from the lead, he steps over the line and ends up crashing out of the race. And I think Kyle just has to get used to bringing it back a little bit and let the car come to him, not the opposite. It's like, when you're in HMS equipment, you're not supposed to have to outdrive your equipment. That's something for guys that are running RCR cars and guys that are running, front row cars, not HMS.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. And to go back to the older equipment, because back then it was more about manhandling the car, slamming it into gears with the old H pattern box, and just over driving the car to make up the spots. And there was nobody, at least in my opinion, back then in the early 2020s, that was better at over driving his car to make up positions than Kyle Larson, as we saw in 2021, where he won 10 races plus the championship. On road courses, perfect case in point, like you said, with Chase Elliott not adapting to the new car in comparison to the old car. Another Hendrick driver, look at Jeff Gordon. When they went from the Gen 4 Twisted Sister cars to the car of tomorrow, he won no road course races.
Mm-hmm.
on with the Gen 5 car. So it just seems like in the beginning, well, okay, maybe not in the beginning. Well, it just seems like these last two generations with the Camaro, Hendrick Motorsports has a slow start and a slow beginning to the new bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they finally get it right, they get it right in a big way. So now you worry because what's going to happen next year with another potential new body coming for Chevrolet?
Mhm. That's exactly what I was thinking of. That new body. So you have this down year. Maybe you don't gather it back up even next year. And if we get this new Camaro announced and released, then maybe you're looking at 28. We have a new Camaro body, and then they have to rebuild again. And Rick Hendrick's getting older. When he, passes away, there's going to be a big leadership change. And you're going to see that at most of these organizations. You're going to see that. You're going to see, Gibbs, he's getting older. Penske's, ancient. I think he was around to see the 10 Commandments, when it happened. So
I think he wrote them.
Yeah, he may have been there, but just ancient. So yeah, I mean, we're coming up on a huge time in NASCAR's history. The sport's now old enough that people that were here at the start are all dying off. So
yeah,
it's but anyway, yeah, we're gonna get that new body, and maybe sometime around that time, Hendrick's gonna be going through a leadership change up, potentially seeing Jeff Gordon step into the leading man role, and it's gonna be difficult for them, I think. And so you got to be a little worried if you're a Hendrick or even a Chevy fan for that whole organization, because the success of Chevy as a manufacturer is deeply tied to Hendrick Motorsports' success. Because, I mean, they work hand in hand with each other, and sometimes unfairly to the disadvantage of other Chevy teams.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And then you also have to worry about, with the new body for Ford coming next year, because obviously Ford is also down. I believe the only Ford win so far, is Blaney at Phoenix.
I believe so, yeah. And I mean, multiple times this season, but specifically this race, I would look up at the top 10, and there would be no Fords. And the first Ford would be like 12th, Ryan Blaney, 13th, Zane Smith. And it's like, what are they doing? And Ford in general, they only have a few cars in each series, and sometimes none in the O'Reilly series.
Yeah.
So Ford as a whole, like not just their performance, but their involvement in NASCAR needs to really step up. Especially once, like, if Dodge re-enters the Cup Series and the O'Reilly series, Ford might lose another team. RFK, they have Brad has a history with Dodge executives, and Penske does as well. So, it's gonna. I don't know. Will Ford even be in the sport in 10 years? I'm not sure, because at this rate, it seems like they're more invested in the endurance racing and the formula racing.
Oh, I agree completely, especially because if you are, like, let's say you are Front Row Motorsports and you are a middle tier Ford program, and let's say Dodge comes to you and says, hey, here's a blank check. Do what you got to do to get competitive and get our cars up front for the Daytona 500 in 2027. That's going to be enticing to any team. Money talks.
Oh, for sure. Well, especially in racing.
Yeah, I think the only two teams for, let's say Dodge does enter NASCAR in 2027. I mean, it's all but confirmed, but I mean, we as fans pretty much know that they're going to be in the sport by 2027. Who's to say that, like, they don't try and get, like, a major team like a Penske or a Front Row? I mean, obviously, if they enter the Cup Series, they're going to bring Colwood racing with them. But what's it them to say they don't try and lure away, like, a Trackhouse Racing or a Richard Childress, for example? Obviously, I think the only two teams that would probably stay with the manufacturers or with this year would be Hendrick and Chevrolet, Gibbs and Toyota, and obviously 2311 because of Denny Hamlin's association. But if Dodge enters NASCAR, you really going to have a potential for them to try and get one of these middle teams and elevate them to be the flagship team for Dodge.
I think Legacy.
Then what do you do?
I think Legacy has a ton of funding. They have a ton of people involved in that program. Toyota was supposed to make up the difference. That's why they left Chevy. But with the Petty involvement, he ran Dodge at one point. Could see Legacy switch manufacturers. And I think that would be a good grab because they have, 2 cars right now, and they're going to 3 next year with a 4th part-time car. I mean, that would be a huge boost if you got that. But, I mean, Trackhouse has such close ties with Chevy. I'm not sure if they would change, but I think the branding would fit because they're like a newer, they want to be progressive, have all this fancy stuff. They wanted to put their shop in Nashville on Broadway. So it's like, I feel like that would be a huge, win for Dodge if they could convince, one of these existing established teams into switching.
Yeah, like I'm looking at it right here on my computer quick at Richard Petty through the years with his history with Chrysler. And except for like maybe 1 or 2 years where he drove like a Chevy or a Ford, he's been in the Chrysler family, whether it be Dodge or Plymouth, pretty much his entire career. So, and I think he won every single one of his championships with, in the Chrysler family.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of his, I think it's like 184 of his 200 wins were with Chrysler and Dodge. So who's to say they don't say, hey, we were partners for 50 some odd years. Why don't we rekindle this this partnership and bring Legacy and poach Legacy from Toyota? And then Toyota would then lose the major sponsorship with Monster Energy.
Yeah.
And then Eric Jones. Who else is there? John Hunter Nemechek.
That would be, one thing to think about is whichever team you want to try to poach, you also need to do it with the intent of taking away a good team from another manufacturer. So breaking up alliances, weakening I guess the easiest team to weaken if you're Dodge coming in would be Ford, but the second easiest would be Toyota. But if you're just going on strictly car count and team count, it would probably be easier to convince more Chevy teams to switch over. You already pretty much have Colleague, guaranteed to switch over if Dodge comes back into the sport. But I think they've waited too late to announce a new program for next season. So I think we're probably at the earliest looking at 2028 to get them into the sport. Unless they're just keeping it super under wraps and no one's leaked a thing. Because there's a whole approvals process they have to go through for a new body and new manufacturers getting in. But I hope it's not just Ram. I hope we see other manufacturers come in. I would love to see like a Honda or a Nissan come into the sport. But the issue there is they don't make a V8 engine. And so unless NASCAR is going to do balance of power or go to spec engines, like what engine would they run? Would it be more of a deal where they make an alliance with another manufacturer and just run that power plant, but run it with the Honda branding? I don't know how all that would work, but something would have to happen if you want to get a foreign manufacturer to come into the sport.
Can you imagine a NASCAR Cup Series with a hybrid V6?
I get nervous
because that would be the only thing I could think of that could potentially bring like a foreign manufacturer in, because they obviously make hybrid V6s. I mean, obviously Honda makes one for IndyCar. I believe Honda is not in Formula One anymore. So can you imagine the NASCAR Cup Series with a hybrid V6?
That makes me nervous because I don't think the other manufacturers would switch to a hybrid V6. And it seems like NASCAR could just be stupid. It seems like they are sometimes, a lot of the decisions they make. But F1's looking at getting rid of the hybrid. IndyCar has already discussed getting rid of it, even though they just introduced it, I think, last year. So, there's just a lot more issues with it than with the bonuses it gives. So maybe NASCAR still goes that route. I know they were talking about it for years, going with some kind of a hybrid system, some kind of electrification. But especially if like Chevy, maybe Dodge, whoever wants to stay with a V8, but then NASCAR like okays an equivalent V6 engine with hybrid elements or turbo elements, then you introduce balance of power. And NASCAR already does a pretty poor job of that as far as aero. Because, like, Ford has had an aero disadvantage for the last several years, and they've done nothing to address it. So, do we really trust NASCAR to balance of power the power plants of these cars? That
Absolutely
gets sketchy.
not.
That gets really... I know they have experience with IMSA, but even with IMSA, track to track can change what car has the advantage. You can go to Sebring and it's like, oh, the Corvettes have the advantage. And then you go to Watkins Glen and it's the 911s with the advantage. And it's like, you don't really want to see that in the sport, which, I guess you somewhat used to if you go back far enough, where the bodies were so different and actually looked more like the showroom models. Then sure, there was some balance of power going on. But there were years where like one model of car would be so dominant, teams would switch manufacturers mid-season and start running a different car because that car would just win every single race. And so the guys in a previous year car or guys in a different manufacturer had no chance to win some of those races in the early 60s and 70s for NASCAR. So, the more you lean into balance of power, the more you want to go back to cars looking like their showroom equivalent, the more you're going to have to take balance of power serious. Because, like, in what reality would a Camry keep up with a Camaro? There's no track that would benefit the Camry. So, some balance of power is going to happen. Because, like, I've talked to people recently that complained, like, oh, I don't like the new cars. They don't look enough like the real showroom ones. And I'm like, number one, compared to the Gen 4 and Gen 5, even the Gen 6, yes, they do. They look a lot more like they used to. Like the Camaro, some of the body panels look like a 1-to-1 almost of the actual equivalent to real life. I guess the biggest like one that sticks out right now is the Camry. It doesn't look like a road Camry because it's so low to the ground and just massive. But you can't really, unless you want to go balance of power, where you're going to nerf a Camaro to run alongside a showroom Camry, it's not going to work.
It's not going to work at all. And you're 100% right. The more they want to play into the balance of power, the more you're just going to have to tell the manufacturers, hey, just go to your local dealer, get the car off the line, and bring it to the track. But then you're going to bring a 4-cylinder Toyota Camry with a V8 Camaro or even a V6 Camaro that's going to have 100 and some more horsepower. Yeah, it's going to weigh several hundred pounds more, but at that point, then you lose the appeal of racing because then there's no aerodynamic challenges. The street tires would most likely blow at, by 2 laps in from the heat. And it's just, they have to do something to make the racing better. And I still am in full agreement with Dale Earnhardt Jr. when he says it's the solution to making the Cup racing better is to take the Xfinity car, put it in the Cup Series at 100 horsepower or 150 horsepower, because then it has the allure of what it was back in the 90s and the 2000s when the cars were almost identical, but the Cup car was 100 horsepower more than their back then the Busch Series counterparts.
Yeah, I mean, at NASCAR's max, we were pushing 875 horsepower. And nowadays, our high horsepower package, only run on some tracks, is 750. And this is also one of the draggiest cars NASCAR's ever had. So you can't even take advantage of the 750 as much because you're just punching such a big hole in the air.
It's a sports car. That's all it is. It's a sports car that drives on ovals. Like when you go to a track like a Martinsville, and in the middle of the corner you are downshifting, that's a problem. That should be a red flag.
Yeah, the 5 gears was a mistake.
I completely agree.
Well, so much of this Gen 7 was a mistake. In theory, when they were designing it, it's like, this is a good idea. This is going to help. And sure, it gives you more options, but like, that's not what stock car racing is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be difficult. The car isn't supposed to drive well. That was the fun, and it's the fun of going back and watching old races, is seeing the cars come off the corner and just sliding. You actually see the car sliding through the corner. It's like, that is a driver that is on edge. They're controlling this thing. They're not just wide open 90% of the time, like slot cars. You know, at least we're not back in the days of the 550 Gen 6 package, but
oh god,
we're barely better than that. I mean, it's definitely an improvement, but the dirty air has gotten worse. At first,
hot take when I say this, but NASCAR should have really looked at the car and figured out what is wrong with it when SVG literally came in and in his very first race went out, smacked the field, and won. You let an outsider come into your series and pretty much take your drivers behind the proverbial woodshed. I mean, yeah, it was a street course, it was a road course, it was raining, it's his wheelhouse, but that had never happened before, where a driver came into the series in his first career start and won the race. And he won that race pretty handily, if I can remember correctly. But that's when NASCAR should have been like, we need to get this looked at, because an outsider just came into our sport and pretty much beat our drivers. And that should not be happening. Because if you take, like, I'll use for an example. If you take SVG and you put him in a Formula One car, he's probably not going to make the 107% that they require you to make to run the race. He's probably going to crash turn 1, lap 1.
And those old,
go ahead.
The old car, it was, it was a completely different suspension, completely different type of steering. It was an H pattern, and just so much has changed. The sidewall is much shorter than it used to be. You know, the wheels themselves are bigger. The tires are fatter. There's just so much they did to change the car at a fundamental level. I mean, any one of those things you can't really change without changing the whole rest of the car. Usually when you're trying to fix a problem, the best way to do it, the most ethical way to do it, is to adjust one thing at a time. That way, if something fixes the issue, you know exactly what did it. What they did with this Gen 7 car is they changed up about everything. Even down to like what material the car is made out of, who builds the chassis. I mean, so much changed. And so now NASCAR's at a point to where they've tested at several different tracks, different downforce packages, taking off the splitter, taking off the diffuser, putting on more horsepower. They've tested all these different things, and they don't really know what the true fix is going to be. And it's because we shotgun blasted this Gen 7 and changed pretty much everything. And now it's like, oh, well, we need to take the underbody off. And it's like, well, you can't do that because the car was designed around that. You take it off and the car will have no downforce. Okay, well, let's take the splitter off. Well, you can't do that because that's why the underbody works. And it's like, my goodness, what can we change? Like, with these toe links, all this stuff breaking, well, why can't we go back to the 5-pattern lugs? Because that's more entertaining for the pit stops, shows more skill. You know, I don't think it's as entertaining watching the tire changer go up and hit one lug and then take the tire off. But you can't change that because now the wheel is a certain size and you've taken the sidewalls out of the tire. And so if a car gets a flat, they get stuck. That was never an issue before. And there's just so many issues they've caused themselves that we can't just fix. You know, the drivers are...
I remember reading somewhere, I believe it was Denny Hamlin that said that, because somebody asked him what about the single lug nut for the wheel, and I believe somebody asked him, well, didn't they try the five lug nuts? And he said with how the toe links and the suspension components are designed, it would not have fit on the studs. It wouldn't have worked. So again, you shotgun the car, like you said, which I completely agree with. You shotgun the car and you changed basically everything but the branding of the cars. And now you're sitting here wondering, well, what can we do to fix the car? I'm still on the whole. I like what Dale Jr. said about just taking the engines from the Xfinity series, taking the cars from the Xfinity, the bodies, the panels, everything, and just throwing them in the Cup Series. I actually saw something earlier today. It was from the 2024 Iowa race that the ARCA cars, but I think William Byron won that pole. It was also William Byron. Yeah, William Byron won the pole for the Cup race. He would have started 17th in the ARCA Series race. 16 ARCA cars were faster than William Byron's pole lap at Iowa in 2024.
Yeah, that's happened a few times with this next-gen car where the Cup car is actually running the slowest lap time of the weekend. But if you put them on the track together, with the way the car is set up, the Gen 7 car would blow them away in the corner. But then on the straightaway, they're crawling. And it's just irritating to go back and watch old footage where they're entering the corner at Michigan at 220. Or they're, you know, running top speed around Charlotte above 200 and setting record laps, to now it's like their top speed crossing the finish line is 184. And then you dive into the corner and you slow down to 160. It's like a 20-mile-per-hour difference is not impressive between straightaway and middle of the corner, whereas 200 or 220 down to 160, that's extremely impressive because you're actually having to manage your brakes and, you know, nail your braking points. And nowadays, like, even if you miss a corner, you can just downshift to fourth, you know, gain that speed back a lot easier than you used to could being stuck in fourth. And there's too many problems to talk about. It's just frustrating.
I remember I saw a video comparing Chase Elliott's pole lap from the Daytona 500, I believe it was his rookie year, to Kyle Busch's lap this year for the 500. And Chase Elliott was like, I think, 3.5 seconds faster than Kyle Busch.
That seems about right.
Like a 40. I think Kyle Busch was like a 49 something, and Chase Elliott was like a 45.91. It's like, where do you lose 3 seconds just by switching cars?
All the drag this Gen 7 car makes, it's actually ridiculous. That's why these guys can't get runs. No one pulls out anymore. We're 3 wide, just stuck. Too much drag. And, you know, the only way to really make up ground on those big tracks is to have someone pushing you and have a run. Otherwise, you're not going to clear the car you're trying to pass. It's rough because the last few years of the Gen 6 car, even when it got dangerous for a little bit, going back over 200 and cars flying, it was the most entertaining package we had in the Gen 6 era. Because for years, they would just single file out for 490 miles, and then they would pull out and wreck a few times, and then somebody would win. But we got to a package there at the tail end where guys could get massive runs and come from 15th to 1st in a couple laps, and it was a great time. And even though they like increased the spoiler height and put a blade on it at different points to try to slow the cars down, they were still able to get big runs. And yeah, they completely flipped it. The 1.5s used to suck in the Gen 6, and then but at least the short tracks and the road courses and the super speedways were good. Still like must watch TV. And then now it's completely the opposite. The 1.5s, they're not great, but sometimes they're good. I think they're a little less entertaining than they were just a couple years ago. I think the dirty air problem's getting worse now that drivers have figured that out. Guys like Denny, Joey Logano. But the short tracks are almost unwatchable. The super speedways, maybe still like exciting, but it's not like, it's not good racing. And then the road courses, it's just one guy winning them all. And outside of that, I mean, you just don't see guys sliding the corners like they used to. It's just not as entertaining to watch the cars make laps. It's like,
no, it's honestly not. Personally for me, I still think the best year, from what I can remember, since they left the Gen 4 cars, so approved from like 2007 on, or 2008, excuse me. I still say 2014 was the year I felt like NASCAR got everything right in 2014. They had a perfect engine package, a perfect aero package. The cars were, making almost 950 horsepower, screaming down the straightaways. Doing, like you said, on 195, 200 going into the corners. I believe, like Chicagoland, Kevin Harvick's pole, or not Chicagoland, Kansas. Kevin Harvick's pole, like going into the corner in 2014, was like 203 miles an hour, and he had to slow it down to 165. So it brings back into your point of knowing when to brake, knowing when to get back on the throttle, because at your right foot is a 950 horsepower screaming engine. It's just like you said, they just shotgunned the Gen 7 car to make all these changes, and now they're trying to figure out how to make the cars faster. But they can't change anything on the car, because if you change something on the car, you have to then change something else. And if you change that, then you got to change something else. And then it opens up a proverbial can of worms to make the cars more competitive. And you kind of can't do that, right? It's the proverbial, they dug their grave, now they got to lie in it.
I mean, yeah, a big driver of it is the money aspect. And NASCAR, they promised the teams that this car was going to be cheaper. They had them fire their fabrication department, say you're no longer going to build the chassis, you're going to buy them from Dallara. And from what the team owners have said, this car hasn't saved them any money. And they all had to put out money to buy these cars they don't own. It's not like they can go race these cars in other series. They can't. NASCAR owns the rights to that car. So the teams are kind of stuck driving it. NASCAR feels like they're stuck using this car because the team owners, probably the RTA, NASCAR gets a lot of the flack for decisions that the RTA makes, the Race Team Alliance. It's the team owners that sometimes shoot down the good proposals, like going to more horsepower, sliding the numbers forward, this or that. There are multiple times where NASCAR has gone to them and said, do we want to take a look at changing this? And the team owners shoot them down. So I would be surprised if NASCAR's tried something to fix this car, but the team owners don't want to pay the money for it. But it's so short-sighted. You don't invest more money because you're trying to save money, but then the product gets worse. More people tune out. Less people are tuning in. Less new fans are coming into the sport. So there's less sponsors involved. So now there's less money for your team to run. It's just a cascading effect. The more you try to save money, the more you're gonna, lose in the long run. And yeah, so at some point they have to bite the bullet. But to do that, if we wanted to bring back the O'Reilly car, for example, you would have to rehire all those fabrication departments. Because most of the O'Reilly teams are running old chassis, old Cup chassis. And, the Cup teams aren't just going to buy them back. They're going to want new stuff with their own innovations built in. And so unless you maybe had Dallara start building Gen 6 cars, which I think would be a terrible decision, you have to turn it back over to the teams. Like, okay, most of you already have affiliation with one or two Xfinity teams, go work with them. But and it would be good. A lot of guys would get their jobs back. A lot of the old fabricators and a lot of the old body shop technicians, but it would be such a huge expense. And that's probably what's really slowing him down from making that change.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, because I'm sitting here thinking of like teams that have affiliations with an O'Reilly Series team, and I can think of only like maybe a handful, like Hendrick, Gibbs, Haas, Childress, like almost no Ford, there's no Ford teams in the O'Reilly Series. Well, there's no full-time Ford teams in the O'Reilly Series, so that could be a byproduct of Ford teams just saying, hey, there's no point having a fabrication shop for like a Penske to have an O'Reilly Series team because it costs us too much money.
Yeah, like on that note, I think, and this may like drive new manufacturers away, but like, who cares? It's not like new manufacturers are flocking to the sport. I think there should be a minimum participation rate for each series that you participate in. So if you're in all three series, you need to have at least 4 cars starting every race, or at least attempting to start every race. That way you wouldn't see, like Ford completely disappearing from Saturdays where it's just the Chevy show and occasionally a Toyota will win.
I completely agree.
And I just think it would also increase support for those series. So if Penske opened their team back up in the O'Reilly Series, I bet they would compete pretty well. I mean, Penske knows how to run a shop. They may not win every week, but you're going to have some well-funded cars, some cars that are probably well-sponsored. And that also opens up the pipeline for younger drivers. Right now, everyone gets funneled through Gibbs or Junior Motorsports. And that's the main 2 pipelines in the O'Reilly Series. And used to Ford had Penske, and now they don't really have anything. And so it's like they have a driver in the Truck Series, then they disappear when they go to the O'Reilly Series, and then they have to poach them back from Junior Motorsports or from Gibbs, and it's a really like weird system we have now.
It puts you in a situation where if you're somebody like a Corey Heim, who, I mean, obviously it worked out for him, and we all know Toyota was never going to let him go. But if someone like Corey Heim, can you imagine if there was a Penske O'Reilly Series ride with sponsorship, with funding? You could have almost said, hey, to Corey Heim, Toyota's dragging you around. Why don't you come over here? You have a full-time guaranteed ride. Then maybe Ford gets what many people are saying are going to be the best racing talent to come since Joey Logano and Corey Heim. Or, and then also you run the situation of, like you said, if there is a driver like a Lane Riggs, for example, in the Truck Series that wants to come up to the O'Reilly Series, there's no Fords. Where's he gonna run?
Yeah, the path forward for some of our truck guys, it's like it's confusing. It's like, do they jump straight to Cup, or do they go run for the competitive manufacturer, or the competitors' manufacturers? And it's weird, but it's not unseen. Like, I think Byron drove a Toyota in the Truck Series and then went back to Chevy, but it is a weird situation because manufacturers can be difficult to work with. So if you have a driver you know is probably going to jump back to a Ford in a couple years, do you give them access to the R&D shop? Do you let them run your sim? Like, how willing are you to work with that driver you know is going to go work for the competitor in a couple years?
Yeah, I completely agree. And then you run the situation. Then you run that scenario of, if let's say it is like a Connor Zillich, and let's say Connor Zillich didn't have a, let's say Daniel Suarez signed on with Trackhouse for another, let's say 3 years, and then that leaves Connor Zillich on the outside looking in regards to wanting a cup ride. Does Penske try and poach him? Does he try and go to Gibbs? Does he try and go to, let's say, 2311? It just, you need to have more support in the lower series. If I was NASCAR, I would take the charters and I'd be like, hey, the charter with the new charter agreement, you have to have at least, I believe so, what, four? They're allowed, what, 3 cars in the charter series for the Cup Series. But I know Hendrick and Gibbs are grandfathered in to have 4. I would make it a rule to where you have to have at least 2 teams under your house, not affiliations, no Junior Motorsports, no, what's the one from Toyota? What, Sam Hunt Racing, I believe it is, the 26.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have at least 2 cars from your organization run the O'Reilly Series, and then 2 trucks running in the Truck Series. Like that to me, that's what I would do. You have to have at least 2 in the lower series to help develop the younger talent and keep the pipeline going.
Yeah, I mean, it gets tricky, and I think there's too much of a rush to get some drivers up to the Cup Series, especially when there's not a good car available. Like, some guys will jump at a backmarker team in a higher series just because it's a car that's available, but then you doom yourself to 30th place finishes every week. So I think a little more patience, being okay with running the Xfinity Series for 5 years in a row. I think it would work out. Like, Noah Gragson was the king of the Xfinity Series. He jumps up to Cup and he gets stuck with the Stewart-Haas and the decline, and now he's with Front Row and he's not doing well there either. Would it be better to run back in the pack in Cup, or would it be better to actually be winning and increasing your stock? When a Hendrick guy's out, one of the first guys they call is Justin Allgaier because he has a high stock. They know he's going to run well, whereas it's not often you see them bring over a competitor. Like, they tried with Corey LaJoie that one time, and it didn't go well.
Yeah. Another perfect case in point would be Josh Berry. He was with Junior Motorsports. He was up front running. He was competitive, and then he jumps to the Wood Brothers, and he's pretty much a non-factor except for his one win, which I believe was, I want to say Las Vegas a couple years ago.
Vegas, yep.
So, you run the risk of, like you said, would you rather be running every single Sunday 4 to 5 laps down, knowing that every time you step in that car, every time you sit in that car, you're gonna run 25th to 35th every single week? Or would you rather be running on Sunday maybe less viewers, maybe less attendance, but you're running top 5, top 10 every single week. That's going to attract the sponsors. That's what's going to attract the money for when you eventually do go to the Cup Series.
Just different mindsets. Like, I guess the argument for being a back marker for a team like the Wood Brothers or for Front Rows, you're probably making a lot more than you would in the O'Reilly Series, but you may be hurting your career 10 years down the road. Whereas if you stayed in Xfinity, kept winning, became the next Justin Allgaier, well, maybe if a ride happens to open up, you're the first name they call. And, then you have that opportunity to move up into a good car instead of one where you're just hanging on. And, let's say you're a John Hunter Nemechek running for Toyota. If a better talent comes along, someone from a lower series, they want to promote, Toyota, they are known for killing off drivers' careers, guys that never really took off. So, like they did with Eric Jones, that's, they got him back eventually, but, they sent him packing to go run for Petty. And now,
I'm looking at it. I'm actually looking at it right here. Apparently, SVG and Chase Elliott exchanged words on pit road after the race.
Oh, that's interesting. Wonder what that's in regards to.
It's on Front Stretch's Twitter account. I'm looking at it right here. It seems like it was a cordial conversation. But
I bet it would be with SVG.
Yeah. It seemed like it was a cordial conversation. It seemed like it was a cordial at first until Chase got out of the car. Then it seemed like at that point it was starting to get a little bit, I don't want to say getting intense, but it seemed like they had a little bit of an agreement to disagree. Agree to disagree. Maybe it was in regards to something that happened on the last lap. But it seems like I'm watching it right here. It seemed like it was. I don't want to say they were like intense or whatever, like having a little bit of a disagreement, but Shane walked over. It looks like they were talking. It seemed like the middle of it, they were getting a little bit of a disagreement, and then it looked like Shane just said okay, and they shook hands and they walked away. But that's something that's quite interesting, if you ask me.
Yeah, it would be hard to get mad at SVG because I feel like he would be like, "Oh, what's up, mate? How you doing?"
Yeah. Plus, not gonna lie, too. I'm looking at the comments here. Somebody was just like, Chase should have just got out of the car and swung on SVG. It's just like SVG has 7 inches of reach on him. It's just like that's not even a fight at that point.
You don't fight somebody with bigger forearms than you, and you don't fight somebody with reach on you.
Yeah.
Unless you're gonna take him to the ground immediately.
Yeah, it looks like SVG's arms are bigger than Chase Elliott's legs. But I'm also gonna go off on a bold prediction before I head off.
All right.
I'm calling it now. I think Carson Hocevar gets one more win in the year before the season ends.
That is a Super Bowl prediction after today's race.
Well, you have to have good races in your bad races.
Mm-hmm.
And it would not surprise me if he wins next week in Michigan, because if I remember, I believe it was last year, he was running extremely competitive with Byron and Larson before his tire blew out.
Yeah, Hocevar wasn't too far outside the top 10 and occasionally in the top 10 tonight, if I remember correctly. And it's honestly weird to me that there are days where some Spire cars, maybe one or two of them, maybe usually it's Suarez and Hocevar, and then maybe one Trackhouse guy, either Chastain, on the odd occasion, SVG, outrunning 3 out of 4 Hendrick cars. And it's like, they're not supposed to be the tier 1 equipment. They're not supposed to be. So, like, you know, out of all the Chevy teams to not run well, the flagship ones are the ones that are struggling. And
Yeah.
I don't, it's hard to say really what's going on with every one of their teams. Larson more or less is up there. There are weeks where he's running top 5, and it's like, oh, he actually might have race-winning pace. Versus, like, Chase Elliott's 15th, Byron's 17th, Bowman is 19th, and then Bowman might start, let's say, 35th. Throughout the first stage, he works his way up to 22nd, whatever. And then whenever that first stop is, or maybe their second stop, Blake Harris just adjusts the speed out of it, or they have a slow stop. They get sent back to 30th again, and then they're just stuck there. How are you making the car worse on a weekly basis? There should be one week where they start slow and then work their way up, and that I don't think that's happened once this year for Bowman. They're either
No, and then when you're mired back in traffic, that's when you get into the accidents.
That's what happened today. It's exactly what happened today.
Exactly.
Which
I mean, you know, it was a bad week. You know the Chevys were struggling in this race when the highest finishing Chevrolet was a Hayek Racing Chevrolet with Stenhouse Jr. finishing 4th.
That Kyle Busch scheme had 10 extra horsepower.
I'm assuming so, because it must have had something, because I mean, SVG finished 5th. I believe Chase Elliott was 6th, you know. So they had, I believe Chevy had had the most cars, like manufacturers, in the top 10. Let's see here.
They're the 3 out of 10. Ford had 2, and Toyota had 4.
Okay, so it was Ford then, yeah. That was Toyota, excuse me. Yeah, but yeah, you know, when you look at the pylon and you see all 3 Gibbs cars, which as of this year, that's what we expect. You know, I have a gut feeling it's going to be like another 2019 where it's going to be Joe Gibbs against the field, or 2015, or even 2015 where it was Joe Gibbs against the field. Like, it would not surprise me at all if we see another 1, 2, 3, 4 out of Joe Gibbs racing at some point in this year. And then you look at 4th place and you see it's not a Hendrick car, it's not a Chevrolet, it's not a Hendrick car, it's not Trackhouse, it's not Spire or Childers, it's Hayek, who probably have almost no funding from Chevrolet. And I'm even surprised that they're still in business at this point.
Especially with that branding.
Makes you wonder, yes. And it just makes you wonder, like, you know, that could be a team that could switch to Dodge or even to Ford, you know, next couple of years with the realignment, with the new cars come, with the new, I'm assuming the new aero and rules will come in 2027. If NASCAR changes the rules, it seems like every year.
I could see someone buying their charter out completely. So, like, kind of a merger.
Well, that could be a good point, because Legacy Motor Club is getting that 3rd charter from Rick Ware after the lease expires from Roush Fenway RFK.
Mm-hmm. So I mean,
that makes you wonder what's RFK going to do for next year with, you know, 2 charters for 3 cars.
There have been rumors that Buescher could go somewhere and that could free it up, or, you know, even if Buescher does go somewhere, maybe that sets the stage for a Ricky Stenhouse-Roush reunion back in the 17. That would be wild. 47 becomes his old ride.
But the question is, where does Buescher go? Because I really don't know if there's seats open.
So I heard these rumors secondhand, but what they were saying is that there were multiple teams interested. So I'm not sure what that implies, but I mean, I do think Buescher is the best driver at RFK.
Yes.
But I don't know. And RFK is an interesting case because a lot of the time they may start further apart, but Preece and Buescher are usually neck and neck, and then Brad catches up to him halfway through the race. But they're usually running really close to each other. So you might see Buescher 8th, Priest 9th, Brad 11th. And it's like, man, they do a great job of balancing their equipment. It doesn't seem like any given week it's like, oh, that team was a lot better. It's like, nope, they were about the same. Or, maybe the driver was the issue, but they're really good at divvying out equipment. And maybe that's just a case of Brad trying not to play favorites because he is, part owner. But it's been interesting to watch.
Here's a real hot take for you. What about Buescher to the 48?
Could be.
It's a contract year for Bowman. He's not performing nearly as well as his teammates. He's been out of the car, I want to say 3 times for multiple races in regards to injuries.
Back, concussion, and vertigo.
Yeah, maybe Fastenal leaves and goes with. Maybe Fastenal is signed to Chris Buescher to potentially go with him wherever he goes, so he would bring that big sponsorship money. So all he would really need would be a team, a ride with a charter. Who knows? Maybe he goes to the 48. I mean, I know we've heard the rumors. I think even Dale Jr. talked about last week on his podcast. Connor Zilish to the 48. But I don't foresee Trackhouse Racing letting him go.
I think if Hendrick wanted it to happen enough, they could make it happen either through leverage or through money, and maybe a mix of both. But I think if they really wanted it to happen, they could, and especially if they offered Alex Bowman in return. Like, let's say Bowman's not retiring or not leaving the sport, then it could be a switch. We've seen that a few times where drivers will get actually swapped out instead of. That's what happened to Stenhouse. It's how he lost his ride. He got swapped with Buescher, and it's worked out well for one of them. Stenhouse, not so much.
Yeah, but then again, though, too. I mean, I'm looking at it right here. Of like kind of older drivers that've been in the sport for a while. Maybe the 71 and McDowell. Maybe they tell McDowell, hey, we need to get younger. Thank you for everything. It's time for you to go, and maybe that's where they put Bowman in the 71.
I've been
and
saying
that way he's still within the Hendrick camp, so to speak, but satellite.
Yeah, I've been saying that it may be time for McDowell to step away because he was supposed to be the headliner driver over at Spire. And since he's made the transition over there, hosts of ours outrun him on almost a weekly basis. Daniel Suarez in that Curse 7 car has actually got a win now, but is outrunning him on pretty much a weekly basis. And not this week, but barely. Just McDowell's just not running well, and his bread and butter is supposed to be the road courses, and there he's not really showing up either. So it's just extremely disappointing because McDowell was having good runs, regular top 10s, winning, every other season for Front Row. Comes over to Spire where he was supposed to have a little bit of an upgrade and just has really run disappointingly. Yeah, I mean, before Kyle Busch passed away, that's one of the places I was thinking he may end up is that 71. But
I was saying, I actually had Kyle Busch leaving RCR and going to the 48.
That was a possibility that I floated a few times.
Because I have it right here. Actually, for some reason, I have it in my notes on my phone. It says here, Busch to the 48, Busch to the 48, Bowman to the 71, McDowell to the 33, but in O'Reilly, and then Austin Hill would go up to the Cup Series and take Kyle Busch's spot.
Yeah, O'Reilly could be a really good home for McDowell.
Yeah.
I think more drivers, instead of just leaving entirely, should consider O'Reilly careers like Elliott Sadler did. Elliott Sadler
Yeah,
did really well for himself in that, at the time, I guess, Nationwide Series
another
or
person,
to Xfinity.
Justin Allgaier.
Mhm. Yeah, Justin
Who had
Allgaier is the Justin Allgaier prototype.
Yes. I'm just looking at it right here quick, and I completely agree with you, by the way, in regards to McDowell not performing like his teammates when you have Hocevar ninth in the standings and you have Suarez 10th in the standings and McDowell is 20th.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, you have Hocevar and Daniel Suarez in the chase as of now, and then you have McDowell on the outside looking in. So, I mean, at some point, you get pushed out, and McDowell was supposed to be the veteran guy, but Daniel's been running well, and he's a veteran at this point. So, but also if you swapped McDowell for a fellow veteran, you're not losing the veteran presence. You're not losing the older guy, cool head presence. So if he was swapped for a Bowman or whatever scenario it works out, my thinking was, if we were going to see a Hendrick Kyle Busch reunion, it was going to be like a 2-year deal with a 2-year option. That way it'd be a short-term deal if it went poorly. And then it would give Corey Day 2 more years to develop before they bring him up to the Cup Series. At least 2 more. I think that would have been a good way to do it. And I think if the 48 gets a new driver, whoever it is, it's probably going to be a short-term deal. That way they can push that person out if they need to and make room for Corey Day, because for whatever reason, Kyle Larson thinks the moon and the stars of Corey Day. And at times he shows that pace and you understand why. And then other times it's like, oh, yeah, he still has a long way to go developing.
Yeah. I have a gut feeling that if they do get to, if Hendrick Motorsports does have the ability to get a Connor Zilic, I think that would be pretty much curtains for Corey Day at Hendrick Motorsports, because I highly doubt he's going to want to stay, knowing that they went out of their own development system to grab a phenomenal talent. So it makes me feel like that he would probably start looking at other options. Probably maybe get into the Toyota pipeline. Maybe become the successor to Denny Hamlin, who I still. Who would be the successor to Denny Hamlin? Because he has about 2 more years in his contract. So who would it be? Probably Brent Cruz.
At this point, yeah, Brent Cruz looks really good. It's hard to say because the Toyota O'Reilly program, they shuffle drivers out pretty regularly. You don't see guys like keep returning if they don't make it to Cup. Eventually, because like Toyota's a big money driver program. And like not as in like nepotism, but as in they have sponsorship backing, or like they have big family money. And so the Toyota guys that are gonna make it usually rise to the top, like all the way to the top pretty quick. And like Herbst is a case for that, where Herbst could have used more time in the lower divisions, but got pushed to the top, like down our throats. And now somehow, even after getting pushed out of his ride this year, already has a ride for next year. So some people are just destined because they have that money. It's hard to say, because like in 2 more years, that's going to be a whole nother class of drivers that are moving their way up. And I mean, it's just hard to say that far out. And I mean, who's to say if Denny Hamlin wins the championship this year, he doesn't just call it? Because he almost did last season.
I actually, when I watched his interview at the end of Phoenix last year, I was at my parents' house before, I was at my parents' house for dinner when we watched the race, and I looked at my mom and said, he's done. He looked like he was just like ready to retire, ready to call it quits after losing the championship that way. I'm just like, because the first thing in my mind was just thinking like, he has lost the championship in every single conceivable way possible. Like tape on the grill, getting wrecked early at Homestead in like 2010. Again, the aforementioned tape on the grill, falling short, I believe, twice of making the Final Four, and then or just getting to the Final Four and just not having the car. And then last year, literally losing it, coming to the white flag after Larson passed like 4 cars, including him, on the outside to get around that after a caution where he was clearly the best car the entire day.
Yeah, it was.
It's just like
It was tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, like, I think it may just be because Kyle just passed, but Denny seemed way different getting out of the car. I don't know if you heard his front stretch interview, but it just seemed like a much softer, gentler Denny Hamlin. And that's weird to say about Denny, but it didn't seem like he was rubbing it in his detractor's faces. You know, he usually gets out of the car and he's real smug. And today it was different. And I don't know if that's just because of Kyle, or, you know, he had just done the bow. Maybe he was wanting to be respectful, or perhaps he is thinking, you know, I'm towards the end of my career. Maybe he just wants to, you know, get as many wins as Kyle, or maybe surpass Kyle. And if he gets the championship, he's out. Like, I wouldn't doubt it. But, I mean, then you also have, like, the competitor's spirit, though. Denny's winning as much as he ever has in his career. Why would you step away when the iron's still hot? When you might still have another year like this left, where you go out and win 5 races. So, like, there's something to be said about going out on top. You know, Peyton Manning winning the Super Bowl kind of got carried that last year, but he went out on top versus, you know, having a Joey Logano last couple years where you're just not winning, and then this year where you're not really running well. You know, that's got to be difficult.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's also it's just be one of those deals where, you know, the stars have to align for everything, and obviously, you know, they've been aligning very much this year for Toyota, and specifically Tyler Reddick, you know, with him having 5 wins already, and hopefully as the year goes on, maybe Chevrolet can finally get the ball going. Because it feels like right now, this almost feels like 2018 or 2019, where it was, if you remember, it was like Kevin Harvick against Toyota. It feels like this year just might be Kyle Larson against Toyota. And if I'm Chevrolet, I'm seeing how Toyota is whooping our butts every single week. And I'm saying to Hendrick Motorsports, what do you need for us to make that 5 car go faster? Because, you know, obviously that's probably going to be, you know, if, for example, if they want to put all their eggs in the Kyle Larson basket, maybe some to Chase Elliott as well. Maybe say to Hendrick, hey, the 5 and the 9, what do you need to make them faster? Do what you got to do. Like, we got to do something with Toyota.
Yeah, I don't think they've hit the panic button yet, even if they should, because they know, like, it's a long season. We have 12 races left before the chase, but the points reset. And so they're like, okay, you know, whatever. If they win 20 races leading into the chase, that's fine, as long as we figure it out by the chase. And even then, you could have Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick go off into the chase and have a DNF at a Talladega, get wrecked out at the Fall Charlotte race, and then suddenly they're 8th in points, and you have a guy that has been running poorly all year, kind of a Tony Stewart situation, where you have a horrible regular season and then win 4 out of 10 races, 5 out of 10 races. Well, with how they award bonus points for winning, if someone wins 3 or more races in the chase, It's theirs. They got it. I don't care that they started 15 points back from the leader. Like, and the whole points reset just ticks me off. Justin Allgaier has a record points advantage in the O'Reilly series. No one has ever had a gap this large at this point in the year. He has it, and it's going to disappear. At least 95% of it's going to disappear week one of the chase. It's, that doesn't seem right.
It just makes you, it's that kind of consistency and dominance from a Justin Allgaier that makes you miss the season-long points format.
I mean, yeah, it's really going to sting later this year. You know, Justin, he's won so many races this year. Almost won, now 2 days ago, but he almost won on Saturday. That would have been his fourth this season or something. He's won several times already.
He did not win this on Saturday?
Maybe he did. I don't think he did. I know I did, as Justin Allgaier.
Actually, no, Justin Allgaier did win on Saturday.
Oh, he did? Man, we watched that whole thing and I forgot about it. Yeah, he did. Concrete King. That's awesome. That's awesome. That means I'm 2 for 2 on my predictions this weekend. I called Allgaier and I picked Denny, but then I caveated that with, any of the Toyotas could run well. But, I mean, it's hard to pick against Denny and Reddick right now. Every week, they're up front. Every week. And this was
and just think of it this way. I'm looking at it right here. Justin Allgaier has 179 points on Jesse Love.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be that when the chase starts, that's going to go down to 20 points, give or take. So you're not only erasing like 95% of his point standing, you're erasing like 98 or 99% of his point differential. This is turning out to be almost like Connor Zilich's last season, where he had 10 wins and he didn't win the championship because Jesse Love outperformed him for like 10 laps at Phoenix. It might come to a situation like this for Justin Allgaier, where he could be 180 or 190 points ahead of everybody else. The chase resets, he could have a blown engine, involved in a wreck, cut a tire, have a bad run, and then he's not the champion, but he may have most wins, most top 5, most top 10, best average finish, the whole 9 yards. And then if you go to the Cup Series, I believe the finale this year is at Homestead, right? It's Homestead this year?
Yes.
Obviously, if Kyle Larson is within shouting distance of the championship at Homestead, that's going to be a problem for the field because we all know he loves Homestead.
Yeah, it's.
I still think NASCAR should have reverted back to the season points, and I felt like the chase was just, this is what we want to keep the playoffs. You guys want us to go back to full season points. You don't want the playoffs. We don't want that. Here's the chase because it's the best middle ground.
So part of the reasoning why they had to run the chase for the time being is a lot of drivers had bonuses in their contracts or rewards in their contract for making the postseason or for finishing in a certain position in the postseason. And removing that would have fundamentally altered the agreements these teams have already signed and signed with other sponsors and with the manufacturers. And so it was just a nest of things that are problems that would have caused. So they were hoping this would be a more gradual transition. They didn't rule out the season-long points from what I heard, but then I think it was Dale Jr. today in the pre-race said, this is the closest we're going to get to a full season points format. And if he said that on live TV, I'm sure he's already heard from someone at NASCAR, we're never going back to full season points.
Yeah. I agree. Also, apparently they updated the I guess they updated the finishing order. I guess they gave SVG P5 now.
That's what I'm seeing on my end. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but that's what I'm seeing.
Well, I'm on my Twitter account right now, and Trackhouse is saying that after, it says here that it says here because they posted a thing where it says race results, P7 for SVG, and then it says here that correction, after scoring update, SVG has been awarded P5.
Top 5
So
for
that's
SVG.
so that's his first career top 5 on an oval. Again, he was up front all night. He was really, really competitive, and once he figures out how to win on ovals and he starts knocking him out 2, 3, 1 or 2, maybe get 1 or 2 oval wins a season with the 4 to 5 road course wins, he might start being a Jeff Gordon style problem for the field, where he can beat you on road courses and beat you on ovals. That might be a little bit of a scary scenario for the field.
I've considered the threat of what if SVG could win week in and week out. I think at some point someone's gonna be able to dethrone him on the road courses, and maybe it's Zillage if he can figure out this Gen 7 car. But it may be too late in SVG's development to pick up ovals and become a guy who wins 5 ovals in a season. Maybe he can get a couple here and there, and he's running better. But as far as, becoming a threat every week, I don't know. Because, NASCAR, not just NASCAR, but racing in general, is usually something you have to get into at birth, pretty much. It's harder for an older person to pick up all the driving techniques, the racecraft, all the connections it takes to make it in the sport. But, SVG's kind of defied the odds already. So we'll just have to see where that goes.
Yeah, we'll just have to see where that goes. Well, anyway, it was an absolute blast to talk to you about this. So, Mom, I'll let you go for tonight.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you for calling in. Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Yep, bye.
So that was Darkside FPS. Great call we had there. Always fun talking NASCAR with you guys, even in the chat, on the Discord, but especially when we get call-ins. Haven't really had as many call-ins this year, but that was a really good one. So I guess that made up for the lack of call-ins the last several weeks. But and Prime's post-race may still be going on. They probably called it by now, but their post-race hurting our viewership, but it's helping the sport in general. I'd love a good post-race show. I went back and watched last week's, so probably go back and watch this week's. I love the interviews, hearing additional information about what happened, maybe some explanations as to things I was wondering about. I had the points pulled up, but I closed it. I don't think NASCAR.com had them when I last checked. I was having to find it on a third-party website. Okay, they have finally updated it. Right before we wrap things up here, we'll look at the points, and we'll call it for our Nashville show. But yeah, that was Darkside FPS. He's in the channel a lot, but if you want to check out his channel, you can search at Darkside FPSX. And you can probably find him in the chat replay if that's posted. So we have Tyler Reddick still in the points lead. Denny Hamlin, 97 back. Ryan Blaney, 174 back. Chase Elliott, 197 back. We have Ty Gibbs down a spot. Kyle Larson holding 6th. Bell up to 7th. Buescher down a position. Just a rough day for RFK in general. Carson Hocevar holding 9th. Daniel Suarez still 10th. Byron up 1. SVG up 2. He got stage points and a good finish. Brad Keselowski down 2. Really hard day for Brad. They had started working their way back up. Strategy was weird all day, so not really any drivers had a linear progression towards the front. It was a lot of like up 15 positions, caution falls at a weird time. We take 4, they take 2, so we're down again. And it was difficult for guys that started towards the back. Denny, just with the right set of circumstances and probably one of the faster cars in the field, was able to make up that ground from the tail end of the field. So still impressive for him. But, some of these guys just had a rough day. Brad, Preece. Briscoe's up 1. Bubba down 2, crashing out of the race. And Austin Cindric up 1. Preece slipping outside of the chase because of the issues today. And all 3 RFK cars were locked in. I mean, I wouldn't say locked in, but they were top 16 before today. Now they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. Joey Logano, kind of a midday, didn't really go anywhere. Michael McDowell up 1, Zane Smith up 1, Eric Jones up 1. AJ down 3 after running pretty well today. Ricky up 3. Austin Dillon, 24th. Gilliland, 25th. Chastain, 26th. Herbst, Nemechek, Gregson, Dylan, Barry all here. So I guess they removed Kyle Busch from the standings, which is to be expected, but he did earn points, and that A car did earn points. Let's see where they have the 33 in points. I think it should be somewhere around here. Are they really going to say that's a new injury? Only 40 points. That does not seem right. I'm not sure what they did there with Kyle and his points. And then let's see. I want to look where Bowman is. So Bowman, even crashing out of the race, was able to clear. Wait, did he clear Cole Custer or had he already done it? Yeah, he moved up 1. Maybe that's... I'm not sure why that is. He's at 497. If he had had a clean race, he probably would have jumped up to 30th. But, even still, wrecking out of the race, 32nd. Still ahead of Custer, Zilich, Cody Ware. 3 guys who have started every race this season. Bowman hasn't. So I've just been interested in watching Bowman's progression. There's only 12 races left before the chase. So the clock is ticking. He would have to win stages. He would have to win races. I don't see him getting back in the top 16. Not at this point. Bubba's just going to watch the slide. I think I saw Christian said Bubba's choking about it. Chase spot has officially started. If he keeps having races like this today, he'll be 17th before you know it. And then, as you can see here, 15th already. So you're not wrong there. So Cole Custer 21st, Cody Ware 22nd. Also, that was in the race results, not the standings. Impressive, though, there. Good day for those drivers. And then Christian said V8 engines and rear-wheel drive stuff because of Hondas and Nissans, mostly front-wheel stuff. That's right, yeah. So, it would have to be some pretty major changes. That would be super odd, having to incorporate that. I think what would have to happen is if one of the other, like a foreign manufacturer, wanted to come into the sport, they would either have to just buy in and start making V8s, or just make one just for NASCAR, or running a power plant of another manufacturer. So maybe like Honda could align with Toyota. Maybe BMW came over. Just not saying they would ever do that, but let's say they did. Maybe they could align with like a Ford and do something along those lines instead of having to make their own power plant from scratch. But who knows? You know, there's a bunch of money tied up in it, a bunch of regulations tied up in it. But it's been fun. Been fun talking to you guys and just recapping today's race. Having a really in-depth conversation, meandering conversation with Darkside FPS. But go check out his stuff. He's pretty active over on Twitch. That's the best place to probably look him up. But other than that, I hope you guys have a good one, and I will see you guys at some point this week. I'm not sure when, and if we don't go live sometime this week, then at the minimum we'll be live for next weekend's races, probably. Until then, hope you guys have a good one, and until next time.